What is going on, guys? So, whoa, my voice there. Was there something over there? Holy cow! Did you guys see something over there? What? What is going on, guys? So today we are back with another video talking about the normal and flying types today. So in the Jungle Cup there are a plethora of normal and flying type Pokemons that we can choose from to try to enhance a little bit of our team, kind of throw some finesse in there. You know, whatever that is. So all in all, we actually have 10 different Pokemon that we're going to be looking at today. Noctowl, Pidgeot, Staraptor, Swellow, Fearow, Chatot, Dodrio, Farfetch'D, Staravia, and Pidgeotto. Now, of course, that would be an insanely long video. We're not actually going to spend an insane amount of time on all these Pokemon, but we are actually going to take a pretty good deep dive into a couple of these. And to do that, I actually have a spreadsheet that we're going to look at, and basically we're going to show the spreadsheet on this side, and we're going to kind of try to illustrate the subject Pokemon in this side just to kind of give it some little flair. I will say I have taken some feedback on the setup. I do see your guys' point, and I do have an idea on how to rearrange this. I will draw this in paint and show you guys what I plan to make it look like. Hopefully that looked okay. I have no idea how that's gonna look because I haven't done that yet, but hopefully it looks good. All right, so what we're actually gonna start out with today is a look at this spreadsheet that I have made. As you can see on the left-hand column here, we do have all of our meta Pokemon. We have Beedrill, Breloom, Credilli, Fortress, yada yada yada. The entire meta team, basically from PvPoke. And then we actually have Noctowl, Pidgeot, Staraptor, Swellow, Fearow, Chatot, Dodrio, Farfetch'D, Staravia, and Pidgeotto up at the top in columns. So down at the bottom you'll see times that we win, meaning times that we actually do win against the matchup that we're going up against, times that we are the best choice for that matchup based solely on our battle rating, nothing more, not any kind of opinion, just solely based on battle ranking. And then at the very bottom we have times that we are the worst, solely based on our battle ranking. As you can see at the very top, we do have right under our subject Pokemon, we do have the movesets that we're going to be using for those, and those are basically just the top moveset that PvPoke provides. Considering that we've only done a deep dive on Pidgeot, that's the only one that I really had data to back up with that actual moveset, but I trust PvPoke in terms of the moveset, and I did play around with a couple of them just because they're quite interesting. Either way, let's actually go through these to start off with. So we're going to actually point out Noctowl here first and foremost. Noctowl is a very, very interesting Pokemon because it actually ends up performing some of the best numbers out of the entire typing here. So as you can see, we do have notable wins up against Beedrill, Breloom. We actually do still end up winning this matchup up against Credilli. The reason that that's colored green is because that is the best choice out of all 10 of these Pokemon to go up against Credilli with. Then we actually have a win up against Fortress. We don't win against neither Golem nor Graveler, but we are the best option to at least go up against those, so I guess that counts for something. Then we have Heracross, which we are winning against. Ivysaur, same story there. Lantern, you can see we do lose. Magneton, we lose, and Magnezone, we actually end up losing. All of those kind of make some sense. We're pretty much going to have a hard time with all of those in this specific typing that we're looking at today. Then we do have the Masquerain, which we do win. Noctowl, of course, we're going to tie up against, and we do have the Pidgeot, which we actually do lose, which is kind of interesting. Then you can actually see the Raichu we straight up lose against. Scizor we still end up winning, which is great. Scyther we still end up winning. Then we do have the Venomoth, Venusaur, Vespiquen, Victreebel, and then you can see down at the very bottom we do actually have that loss up against Vigoroth. Now, why aren't these that we actually lose against in red? So the reason that we're actually colored yellow is that means that we're not necessarily the best matchup, but we're also not the worst matchup in terms of our battle rating here. So if we go over to Pidgeot, let's just actually look at Magneton here. Magneton up against Pidgeot, we actually have a 126 battle rating, which actually means we do the worst across any of these Pokemon with Pidgeot. Oddly enough, it is tied for the worst with several different Pokemon here. but that's the reason, and that's where actually red comes into play inside of this spreadsheet. So once we get to the very bottom, continuing on with our Noctowl here, we do have times that we win, which just means every time that we have a winning matchup out of these 22 Pokemon, we're actually going to tally that. We have 13 wins here, and the reason that that's colored green is because that is the best, highest number out of all 10 of these Pokemon. Then we have the times that we are the best possible choice going up against these Pokemon. Not the best possible win scenario, the best possible choice. Even though Golem and Graveler are losses, we still do the best up against those two Pokemon out of this small pool of 10 Pokemon with our Noctowl here. So we do have 9 instances where we are the best choice to go up against these matchups. Then at the very bottom we do have times that we are the worst, and of course that is also green because it's a 0. And that means there are 0 times where we are the worst choice to go up against any of these Pokemon. So let's actually take a look at one that's a little bit more controversial here, a little bit different. So let's actually look at Dodrio. Dodrio is not hitting on a whole lot. So Dodrio actually ends up losing a lot. Out of 22 matchups, we only actually end up winning twice, which is pretty rough. That's actually the lowest amount that we have across the board. Dodrio does the absolute worst up against all of this meta. Then we have 2 times that we actually are considered the best possible choice, which is kind of interesting. Small bit of redemption there. But then you can see the times that we are considered the absolute worst choice is 9 out of 22, which is horrible. So Dodrio is by far the absolute worst possible choice here. Now, out of these 10, I do want to take some notes on one, Noctowl. I definitely think Noctowl is going to deserve a deep dive after looking into these numbers here. He's definitely pretty high voted on the list, but of course, if you guys want to accelerate that list, make sure you drop his name down in the comments below. Staraptor is another one. We're going to actually look at Staraptor, and we're going to look at Staravia down here. Pretty interesting. And then we actually have Fearow, which was quite surprising. And we have our good boy Farfetch'D. And Farfetch'D is just kind of a guilty pleasure that I want to talk about today. So really fast, let's actually go over Fearow here. So the reason that I want to talk a little bit about Fearow is because Fearow is actually not necessarily like amazing, but he actually has a respectable foothold here. So as you can see, according to these metrics, only the numbers that I have here in this spreadsheet, Noctowl is definitely the #1 choice in terms of the times that we do the best. And then you can see Pidgeot actually has 4 times, and then Fearow actually has 4 times, which is interesting. And those matchups, the 4 there is not necessarily living up to everything that Fearow and Pidgeot can do, because as you can see, Pidgeot only drops 1 matchup out of the entire 22 compared to our Noctowl here. So it's doing almost just as good as our Noctowl, except that Noctowl is preferred in a lot of these matchups where Pidgeot actually just falls slightly behind. And that's kind of the same case for Fearow. Surprisingly, I wasn't even thinking that Fearow was even going to show up in this list with anything. I thought he was just going to show up with his name tag, he'd punch in and he'd punch out and be done. But he's actually putting up some interesting things here. In 4 out of the 22, he actually does better than most of these matchups, which is kind of interesting, because if we take 4 that Pidgeot does really good in, we take the 9 that Noctowl is doing good in, that right there is already 13 matchups. So we're still doing pretty decent up against 4 out of the remaining 11 matchups, which is pretty interesting there. I hope that makes some sense as my mentality. That kind of sounds dumb when I say it, but it's impressive that even after Noctowl and Pidgeot are taking a lot of the limelight here, Fearow actually still has some of the limelight to capture, if that makes any sense. So 8 out of these matchups we are actually still winning, but 4 of them are the ones that we're actually preferred in. So that's actually really strong. I was quite surprised with Fearow, I have to say. I seriously was not expecting that. So now let's actually take a look at Staraptor here. So Staraptor, I've been getting a lot of comments about, let's do Staraptor, let's see Staraptor, let's see Staraptor. Well, interestingly, if we look at just these metrics here, we actually have 5 times that we're winning up against the top 22 Pokemon in the cup. And then we have 6 times that we're actually doing the absolute worst number up against these Pokemon. We have 6 matchups where we are the absolute worst choice. And then we actually have 0 times which we are the best, which is actually a really big bummer. But if we actually transfer those numbers over to Staravia here, you can see that we almost have a little switch here. So we actually have 6 matchups that we win with Staravia versus these 5 that we win with Staraptor. So we're actually gaining a matchup there. And then we actually have 5 times that we're the worst pick versus the 6 times that we're the worst pick. So out of those, I definitely have to give a little bit more credit to Staravia here versus Staraptor. I know just based on these metrics, this is my conclusion. I definitely think that Staravia has a little bit more oomph in it than Staraptor does. They're very, very similar. As you can see, Wing Attack, Brave Bird, and Close Combat versus we have Wing Attack, Aerial Ace, and Brave Bird. So very similar. I did try to run it with the fire move, but it just wasn't hitting on a whole lot. It actually reduced a ton of the winning matchups that we had, but I guess there is a little bit more to be said. If you're running a fire type move, you do gain a little bit more foothold against a couple of other Pokemon, but it actually made our matches drop quite significantly. So depending on what your team really needs, you kind of could go with that, but with the fire, you do gain some help up against Fortress and Scizor. So kind of just depends on what you really need. So that was quite interesting. I also found that quite cool. Last but not least, let's actually look at our Farfetch'd here, which here again, I was extremely surprised at Farfetch'd. We actually have Fury Cutter as our fast move. Then we have Aerial Ace and Leaf Blade. What? Yeah, so he has a really, really interesting toolkit, and especially not so much in this cup. I really do wish that if we had like water, or if we had like rock, or even ground, something that was actually weak to grass, then Farfetch'd would actually have a bigger foothold here. But with Fury Cutter, we do actually have a pretty good target up against the grass types with our bug type move. Plus, bug type is not going to be resisted by too many things in the cup. Then we actually have Aerial Ace to help drive home those grass attacks. Aerial Ace to really kind of push some neutral damage towards a lot of the other Pokemon. And then we have Leaf Blade, which is really freaking cool, but it's not super useful in this cup. I definitely think that Farfetch'd probably has one of the best toolkits out of the entire cup, but it's very underwhelming in this cup. So unfortunately, I want to say that Farfetch'd could be really cool, but unfortunately he is going to be held back quite a bit because of the typing situation in this cup. Out of all these Pokemon, very, very interesting. So I do have a few things that I want you guys to take away from this video. One, this is not a deep dive. This is a versus video. And in versus videos, I don't go super in depth into these Pokemon. It's something that I do to try to compare Pokemon and try to get a general idea on these Pokemon rather than diving super deep into the movesets and stuff like that to try to figure out those hardcore numbers. This is just kind of a general overview. And I kind of want to recap here really fast that Noctowl definitely seems to be the biggest performer of the meta. Pidgeot definitely is going to be a second close, and Fearow, I do, oddly enough, I do feel like with just the metrics that I have there, I would definitely say that he's my third favorite pick out of those, which is crazy to say, but yeah, I would be as bold to say that, which is weird. Some kind of downer notes in here. Dodrio is definitely the worst up against the meta. He's just crazy bad. Farfetch'd definitely has the most interesting kit, but he kind of ends up lacking a lot and just kind of ends up being very underwhelming. And actually, Staravia ends up pulling a little bit ahead of Staraptor for me personally, just based on these numbers that we looked at in this video. I definitely think that Staravia is a little bit more viable than Staraptor, but that's just based on what I've seen. Of course, PvPoke actually does have these Pokemon ranked in this order, so Staraptor is actually ranked way higher than Staravia. Staraptor is the third best Pokemon in the cup in this typing, while Staravia is actually the 9th best Pokemon out of all of this. So that is gonna be my take. Definitely let me know down in the comments below if any of these Pokemon you feel deserve a deep dive. I'd love to be able to look a little bit further, especially into Noctowl. I definitely want to look into that. I feel like Noctowl and Pidgeot are really going to take a ton of the limelight here. I don't think that Fearow is going to be as kind of looked at, so possibly if you guys want to see like maybe a small like anti-meta, not really anti-meta, kind of like a small like under the radar pick for Fearow there, I definitely think that deserves some attention. And I would actually like to go a little bit further into Staravia and Staraptor, possibly in another versus video, possibly, but that would be up to you guys. If you guys want to see that, definitely let me know down below. That is actually going to be it for this video, guys. One more thing. So this video is actually being recorded in 4K. It's only 30 frames a second opposed to my normal settings, which are 1080p at 60 frames per second. I'm just trying this out to kind of see how it goes, especially in editing, because editing is a really big bottleneck right now. So I kind of want to see if the larger resolution hurts more than the larger frame rate. I definitely like 1080p 60. I feel like it's really smooth. I like the way it looks. I like editing in it because I can generally get some pretty nice stuff pulled out of 60 FPS, but with this 30 FPS at a higher resolution, I don't know how many of you guys are actually utilizing a 4K display, so it probably isn't even going to be worth that, but just let me know if it looks any better, any worse. I know the lighting is still awkward. After I get the new setup built, it'll be a little bit better. So anyways, that's actually gonna be it for this video, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. Always remember that if you like videos, you can do that, but if you don't, you can be that guy. Otherwise, let me know what you have to say down in the comments below, and until our next video, I will catch you then.